Hello and welcome to this demo about WebLOAD and the integration with AppDynamics. So WebLOAD is a load testing tool, so we make scripts, and AppDynamics is an APM, application performance monitoring tool. And let's see how we can work them together to get more than what you can do by themselves. So let's start with WebLOAD. WebLOAD again, is a load testing tool, so we have a script, and the script tells us what to do. The script contains requests to some application that we're testing. So this is just we go to the home page, we do a login, we search for things, then we do a logout. That kind of a flow of a system. All right, so we do the load testing in order to gain insights about what's happening to the server when it's under load. So the next thing we want to do is gather statistics. So WebLOAD, because it's doing the actual request, we know when the request starts, we know when the server starts to respond, and when it completed to respond. So we get all those basic client-side statistics, DNS lookup time, time to first byte, all those data, because we just see it. So we collect all this information automatically in WebLOAD. At the next level, if you want to go further, you can actually group those requests that are all separate requests into transactions. And transactions is very, very useful because sometimes just the HTTP name, header request names is not useful enough to understand what was actually happening. Also, you can see we have sometimes the same request is like the home page can be part of the login, but also part of the logout. So just the name of the request doesn't always tell us the context of what happened. And also the same business request can contain the same business action can contain many separate requests. So we want to group them together. For all these good reasons, we have transactions in WebLOAD. So we can group several requests together. We can say this is where it starts, this is where it ends, and then we get statistics and information about the transactions. Good. The next level up you can get in WebLOAD is we can have Performance Measurement Manager, the PMM, which is server-side statistics. So WebLOAD can, everything up until now happens automatically, but this we can add in WebLOAD the PMM, which are server-side statistics. And then we get, for example, so the application can have many different servers and layers. So there may be a load balancer and an app server. So we can get information from these layers. And that information is information that we get, but it's general type of information. So we can get things like CPU, memory, can be statistics of the database, how it's performing, a ratio of hits and things like that, the app server. But those are all statistics that the browser tells us, and we can see them alongside the action that we do, but they are not particular for the request. And not if we make a GET request, that's the statistics not of that request. The statistic is generated by the server is a generic statistics for the server. All right, so that everything up until now was just WebLOAD by itself. Now I'm going to talk about just APM and what APM products can do, application performance monitoring tools can do, like AppDynamics. So AppDynamics is installed within the back end of the servers, in each one of the servers, and therefore it getting more detailed information about the specific transaction. So if we go to a transaction and we get a response, they can actually see the response going to the app server, the web server, and to the app server, and from the app server to the database server and back. And they can track all these things and to see. So if this whole transaction took a second, they can see what split, what took the most. That's APM. Okay, so let's talk about what you can do when you do everything together. So let's say you have WebLOAD and you also have AppDynamics running on your servers. You can gain all these things together. So you would be able to see the page and hit level statistics, you will be able to see the transaction level statistics, you'll be able to get performance measurement monitoring, also the APM statistics. If you log into AppDynamics, you'll also be able to see where are things taking more time. So all of that you can do basically without the integration. Everything you just say, you can get all this information. The problem with this is that there is no correlation between the values that you get in WebLOAD and the values that you get in AppDynamics. And the reason for that is that AppDynamics is not aware of the transactions that are not transactions, are logical names that we use in WebLOAD to make sense of the requests, but AppDynamics does not see it. It's not part of the request. So it's a bit harder to understand if AppDynamics say, hey, yeah, this database call caused some issue. It's hard to track back to say, okay, we know which request it is, but it's not that obvious to track it all the way back to WebLOAD. Enter the integration. So the WebLOAD integration into AppDynamics it allows to do that basically. So it's a special flag that we add in WebLOAD, and that causes WebLOAD to send AppDynamics the actual transaction name that we're on. And that way, when we look at the statistic, and the next step is we go into AppDynamics and we configure it to look at the specific header that we send. And that causes AppDynamics to make sense of it. So when you look in AppDynamics, you can understand what are the WebLOAD transactions that caused something in the server. And that makes interpreting the results so much easier. Now we can see in WebLOAD which transaction took a long time, and then we can go into AppDynamics and see, all right, what happened in this transaction, and vice versa. If we see something bad in AppDynamics, we can see, all right, which transaction was that and what's going on there, and also which script. Okay, so that's the idea. Now let's see it actually in action. Okay, so this is a sample WebLOAD script. It's a simple script, has all kind of requests, and they have transactions. So this is the home transaction, sales transaction, browse transaction. If you don't know how to record a WebLOAD scenario and add transaction, you should look at other videos that explain how to do all of that. But that's basically a simple WebLOAD script. And if I'm going to run it just now, and I also set up AppDynamics on my server. So if I'm going to run it now, I'm going to see WebLOAD results. And I'll also be able to see in AppDynamics, I'll also be able to see those statistics because AppDynamics is sitting on the servers and automatically would see all those requests even if I don't do anything. Again, the only thing is that when AppDynamics sees that, it doesn't know which transaction it's coming from. So we will be able to see it, but without understanding where it's coming from. Let's see that. I will log into my AppDynamics application. Okay, so this is my application, and here is my business transactions. So because I didn't do anything special with that, not in WebLOAD, not in AppDynamics, I'm just getting the URL basically name. AppDynamics does its best to understand what the transaction means, but it doesn't know about the WebLOAD transaction, and I can still see information, but not based on the WebLOAD transaction, and I can't group them together. Now let's do the integration. So for that, we need to do two things. First of all, in WebLOAD, we need to set it up so it's going to be using the integration. So just add a small JavaScript in the beginning and say global.add WebLOAD header. That's the flag that causes WebLOAD to trigger the custom header that AppDynamics can see. Okay, so that's the first step. And the second step is I need to tell AppDynamics to do something with that flag. So in AppDynamics, in the business transaction, and that UI sometimes changes a bit different between AppDynamics version, but the concept is the same and appears in all of them. So we'll go to configure the business transactions. I'm going to create a new rule. So specifically, my application is a Java servlet application, so I'm going to use that. But all right, let's give it some name. WebLOAD. I'm going to give it a increased priority, so this rule would fire before the other rules. And put it in the default scope. And so for the rule configuration, we're going to say, let's add a header, and we want to check that the header, the WebLOAD header exists. So if the WebLOAD header exists, that's WebLOAD dash transaction name. If that header exists, that it means that that's rule we want to use it. And we're going to say we want to use the transaction name based on that. So we're going to say use a header value. And again, it's the same header. So that's WebLOAD transaction name. And that tells AppDynamics, if you see a request that has this header, use the value, and that value would contain the transaction name from WebLOAD. And that's it. We're ready. Okay, so back to WebLOAD. Now I'm going to run it. I'm going to use the console to run several users. I'll just create the simplest agenda. Next, next. Okay, we'll let it run for a while so we get some statistics. Okay, so now we have some data. We can see it in WebLOAD. We can see the WebLOAD statistics from here. We can see transactions from here. So those are the transactions in WebLOAD. And now let's see it in AppDynamics. Okay, so these are statistics in AppDynamics. We can see them that WebLOAD is the rule name that are defined here. This is the agenda name, that's my script name. If I had more than one script, we would see which script it is running. And then we can see the transaction name. And that allows us now to tie in. We can look at the checkout transaction and we can understand what's happening inside the server and also what's happening in WebLOAD. And that gives us the full map to map all the information from the client to the load through the servers to get a complete picture. That's why we have integration. And that's it. That concludes my demo. So thank you very much for watching, and try it and enjoy. Bye-bye.